Harlem, New York, 1947. The jazz set was the allure for aspiring musicians and beatniks. You could go anywhere in Harlem to hear good music, dance the East Coast swing, and score some heroin. A young and aspiring musician, James Allen arrived in West Harlem from Shreveport, Louisiana, in search of some excitement and maybe a career, but soon found himself caught in the grips of heroin addiction. For 10 long years, he ran the streets of Harlem and lived as a heroin junkie. Nothing else mattered. But Allen had fallen in love with a woman who remained dedicated even after the children had been taken away and being homeless. Eventually, his wife convinced him to go and get treatment for his addiction in Lexington, Kentucky, one of just a few treatment facilities for heroin addicts in the United States at the time. Void of any emotion or pride, he sought the peace that his grandparents who loved the Lord had. Allen rediscovered the Bible and developed a true relationship with God. "I'll dedicate my life to helping other drug victims and share the love of God," is what he wrote home to his wife. And upon his return to Harlem, 33-year-old James Allen began a focused life on doing just that.
Down at the altar.
True to his new relationship with God, Sunday morning found Allen and his wife in the services of the Manhattan Christian Reformed Church on West 122nd Street and 7th Avenue. The issues of addiction in the community were a priority for the pastor after being asked by a heroin addict, "Does God love dope fiends?" The church responded by organizing a forum where addicts could gather, have some coffee, and discuss a better way of life. Allen embraced the opportunity to be a part of the solution and immediately relished a lead role, having only his experiences at Lexington, Kentucky, and his faith as a compass. In 1958, on the second floor of the Manhattan Christian Reformed Church at 201 West 122nd Street, the Addicts Rehabilitation Center was born. The new program offered day services, hospital referrals, and employment assistance. But the citizens of Harlem continued to die disproportionately from a slavery that would just as soon slay you before giving you freedom. At a time when a heroin addict was looked upon as a scourge in society, Allen the Crusader focused on bringing attention to the plight and securing funding for residential services. Allen's determination resulted in the first residential facility for drug victims in the village of Harlem. Allen began to build his team. Just out of the Army and a graduate of Shaw University, Mr. Richard E. Feimster was a family man looking to save our communities with a career as an educator. Allen seized an opportunity and persuaded Feimster to join his mission of saving our communities by saving drug victims. Mr. Feimster came aboard as a caseload worker, but soon would become an integral part of the Addicts Rehabilitation Center during its formative years, as well as a partner and confidant. Mr. Feimster would go on to become the deputy director. The agency began to grow in staff and funding. The need for an honest man with integrity to oversee money matters became crucial to the daily operations of the young organization. Mr. James Bryant, a man who had once swallowed a hypodermic needle while fleeing the police, had also overcome an addiction to heroin some years earlier and was now a man of faith. Jim, as Allen called him, joined the ARC team as a case aide. But educated in finance, he would go on to oversee money matters as the accountant. Mr. Bryant would eventually become the chief financial officer and a stellar employee. Although ARC enjoyed a good success rate, the community's needs were larger than the space available. Allen continued to fear for the lives that he had to turn away due to overcrowding. Fate would intervene, and a good friend and supporter of the cause, Percy Sutton, informed Allen of a vacant 5-story piano warehouse on East 128th Street. Allen, the businessman, seized the blessing, and 1881 Park Avenue became home to 225 recovering drug victims. But the gift came with an unknown mortgage of $130,000. Allen feared having to close down and send heroin victims back into a community with little hope. His faithful wife suggested that he pray about it. Allen gave it to God. Just a few days later, Allen was taken aback by the soulful and harmonious voices of a few residents. The visionary in James Allen immediately realized a way to praise the Lord and continue his mission of saving lives. The ARC Gospel Choir was born. Under the direction of Allen, who had never given up his love for music, the choir began to perform for church, social, and civic engagements while delivering the message of recovery. In time, the mortgage was successfully paid off. The choir went on to record several albums and travel abroad. ARC continued to establish itself as a haven in Harlem. Allen, a firm believer in the potential of an addict, was always seeking soldiers for his mission. Young, intelligent, articulate, and politically connected, Vincent P. Cyrus was not your average heroin addict. He respected Allen's dedication to the community and admired him as a father figure. Vincent realized the community's need for housing after rehabilitation and focused on doing something about it. Vincent's persuasive speaking and writing skills helped to acquire funding for additional services and broaden the mission of ARC. While elevating the community on the ideals of recovery, Allen continued to elevate himself by obtaining an associate's degree as well as a Bachelor of Arts, summa cum laude, in social work. Then, crack hit Harlem. The impact was devastating. The crime rate and homelessness soared. In his effort to help a suffering society, 1881 often stayed overcrowded with an extensive waiting list. By now, a young, ambitious, and spiritually motivated, Reginald Williams had joined the ARC team. Once a drug addict, now a community leader and pastor, Reverend Williams was an extension of Mr. Allen's voice. Reverend Williams, Mr. Allen, and the ARC Gospel Choir engaged the community, built relationships, and secured funding for additional residential services. In 1993, the doors of Richard E. Feimster Memorial at 2015 Madison Avenue were opened, and an additional 204 beds became available to people seeking an opportunity to repair their lives and unlearn old, destructive ways. The choir continued to sing the praises of God and the message of recovery throughout the Eastern Seaboard, as well as Europe, Africa, Asia, and Harlem. Addressing the community's needs have become a way of life for the visionary James Allen. Under the Addicts Rehabilitation Center Foundation and tireless leadership of the Reverend Reginald Williams, several high-standard housing options are now available to the citizens of Harlem. Gabriel House, a residential facility that provides life-enriching services to HIV and AIDS victims, effectively operates on West 122nd Street, just above the Manhattan Christian Reformed Church. Vincent P. Cyrus Plaza offers permanent housing to graduates from the Addicts Rehabilitation Center treatment program, as well as additional housing for individuals living with HIV and AIDS. James Bryant's Legacy Homes provides housing for individuals living with mental illness and individuals who have been chronically homeless. Heritage House offers affordable housing opportunities to individuals and families of Harlem. Mr. James Allen remains committed to his vision of love as a replacement for the societal ill of addiction that continues to afflict Harlem communities, particularly our youth. What began as a small meeting for drug victims to discuss their problems and solutions has grown to become one of the oldest and largest residential substance abuse treatment facilities in the state of New York. The Addicts Rehabilitation Center, a haven in Harlem.